Have you ever wondered what is actually moving fluid through your body when nothing in you has a heartbeat of its own? Your blood has a pump. It is a fist-sized muscle in your chest that pushes 8 to 10 liters of blood through your arteries and veins every minute, about 7,000 liters a day. But your lymph, that colorless fluid draining out of your capillaries, carrying waste products, immune cells, and absorbed fats, has no central pump. There is no lymph heart. There is no equivalent of the cardiac cycle. And yet, every single day, your lymphatic system moves somewhere around 2 to 3 liters of fluid back into your bloodstream. So the question is this: if your lymphatic system has no dedicated pump, what is moving the fluid? And if a single physical movement could meaningfully engage the structures that do the moving, what would it look like and why would it work? That is the question we are going to answer today. And I want to be honest with you at the top. I am not going to claim this stretch cures anything, fixes anything, or detoxes you. The word detox is doing so much work in this space that it has lost almost all of its meaning. We are going to look at what the research actually shows about lymphatic flow, the mechanisms that drive it, and the specific reason why one full body reach combined with deep diaphragmatic breathing lights up almost the entire network at once. The lymphatic system is a one-way drainage system that runs parallel to your blood circulation. According to the StatPearl's physiology reference and the Cleveland Clinic, every day about 20 liters of plasma leak out of your capillaries into your tissues. About 17 liters of that get reabsorbed directly back into the bloodstream at the venous end of the capillary. The remaining 2 to 3 liters become interstitial fluid, and that fluid is picked up by tiny lymphatic capillaries woven through almost every tissue in your body. Once inside, it is called lymph. It travels through increasingly larger lymphatic vessels, passes through hundreds of lymph nodes where immune cells screen it, and eventually returns to the bloodstream at the left subclavian vein, right where your collarbone meets your chest, via the thoracic duct. So, we have a system with a starting point and an ending point, but in the middle, no pump. To understand how fluid actually moves, you have to understand the two mechanisms that do the work. Researchers in the field describe lymphatic flow as the combined product of extrinsic and intrinsic pumping. Scott Scallon and collaborators published a major review on this in the Journal of Physiology in 2016 that remains one of the most cited summaries of the topic. What they show is that lymph moves because of forces generated both inside the lymphatic vessels themselves and outside them in the surrounding tissues. Let's start with the intrinsic pump, because it is genuinely remarkable and most people do not know it exists. Lymphatic collecting vessels are not simply passive tubes. They are segmented into functional units called lymphangions, separated by one-way valves. Each lymphangion contains smooth muscle in its wall, and that smooth muscle contracts spontaneously, generating rhythmic peristaltic-like waves that propel lymph forward, valve to valve, in the correct direction. Michael Davis and colleagues, in research published in 2012, demonstrated that lymphatic muscle adapts to increases in output pressure by increasing its own contractility. Moore and Bertram reviewed the fluid mechanics of this in the Annual Review of Fluid Mechanics in 2018, describing how each lymphangion can contract up to roughly 39% of its resting diameter during a typical cycle. This is not a passive tube. It is a series of miniature pumps, hundreds of them along major lymphatic pathways, firing in coordinated sequence. But here is the critical caveat. The intrinsic pump is necessary but not sufficient. It works well at low loads, under higher fluid loads, under inflammation, under physical stress. The system depends heavily on what Scallon calls extrinsic forces, meaning external mechanical compression from the tissues surrounding the lymphatic vessels. And the dominant extrinsic force in the body is skeletal muscle contraction. Every time a muscle shortens and lengthens, it mechanically compresses the lymphatic vessels running through it or alongside it, pushing lymph forward through those one-way valves. The vein and lymph system is not the same as the lymphatic system, but the principle is shared, which is exactly why walking is so effective at reducing lower extremity swelling. The calf muscle, in particular, has been studied extensively as a lymphatic pump. So, a single bodily movement that you choose to do with intention can increase lymphatic flow. The mechanism is mechanical. It is real. It does not require any pills, devices, or supplements, and the more muscle groups involved, the more lymphatic territory gets compressed. The more coordinated the compression, the more effective it is. Now, I want to add a third element that is essential to this conversation, and honestly, it is the part most people forget. Your thoracic duct, the largest lymphatic vessel in your body, is approximately 38 to 45 centimeters long. It originates from a dilated sac called the cisterna chili that sits behind the diaphragm at roughly the level of the first or second lumbar vertebra. It then ascends through your thoracic cavity and empties into the venous system at the junction of the left internal jugular vein and the left subclavian vein. This vessel crosses the diaphragm. The diaphragm is the most important breathing muscle in your body. And every time you take a deep diaphragmatic breath, something specific happens inside this duct. A research review, published in 2024 Inches, the journal exploring the rehabilitation efficacy of diaphragmatic breathing, documented exactly this mechanism. During inspiration, your diaphragm descends. That descent increases negative pressure inside the thoracic cavity. The thoracic duct, as it passes through that cavity, expands in response to that pressure change, and the flow of lymph through it accelerates. During expiration, pressure reverses, and lymph continues to be pushed downstream by the one-way valves. So every deep diaphragmatic breath is mechanically milking your thoracic duct and helping it deliver lymph from the entire lower body, the abdomen, the pelvis, the legs, into the bloodstream. This is published physiology. It is not a wellness claim. So we have, working together, 3 mechanisms that move lymph: the intrinsic contractions of lymphatic smooth muscle, the extrinsic compression of skeletal muscle during movement, and the pressure changes generated by the diaphragm during deep breathing. A movement that engages all 3 systems simultaneously would, mechanically, activate more of the lymphatic network with more of its native driving mechanisms than almost any other single exercise you could do in the same amount of time. The one movement that does this is a deep, full-body lateral reach with an overhead component, combined with controlled diaphragmatic breathing. In physical therapy and lymphatic drainage literature, similar full-body extensions show up as variations of a whole-body reach or standing side stretch with diaphragmatic breathing. The Cleveland Clinic and physical therapy resources from institutions like Memorial Sloan Kettering use related reaches in their published lymph drainage exercise protocols, not because of mystique, but because of the mechanical coverage. Here is why this specific stretch lights up so much of the lymphatic system. When you reach overhead and laterally, you are elongating the side of the torso, the latissimus dorsi, the intercostals between the ribs, where intercostal lymphatic vessels run, the shoulder muscles where axillary lymphatic chains drain the arm and breast tissue, and the lumbar muscles on the opposite side where the lumbar trunks feed the cisterna chili. The motion compresses some of those tissues on one side while stretching others. But the lengthening component is what matters most for lymphatic flow, because lengthening a muscle belly also lengthens the lymphatic vessels running through it. And lengthened vessels with intact valves cycle more lymph per contraction. This is a documented property of lymphatic vessels under axial stretch. Pair that with active deep breathing, and you simultaneously mobilize the thoracic duct. Let me walk you through the actual movement. Stand with your feet about shoulder width apart. Place your right hand on the side of your head, palm resting gently against the side of the skull, elbow pointing up and slightly out. From here, take a slow diaphragmatic breath in through your nose for a count of about 4 seconds, allowing your belly to expand without your shoulders rising. As you begin to exhale through pursed lips for a count of 6 to 8 seconds, simultaneously reach your right elbow up and over toward the left side of the room. You are not collapsing sideways. You are lengthening the entire right side of your body, from your hip all the way through your fingertips. The stretch should be deep, but not painful. As you reach the bottom of your exhale, you should feel an obvious stretch through the right side of your torso, the right shoulder, the right rib cage. Hold for the last second of the exhale. Inhale slowly, return to upright. Repeat on that side for 3 to 5 breaths, then switch. The breathing is not incidental. It is the active ingredient alongside the stretch. The exhalation phase is when the thoracic duct is being most compressed by the diaphragm's return upward. And that is when you want to be at maximum lateral stretch. The inhale is when you reset. Over 10 minutes of doing this slowly, side to side, breathing in pace with the reach. You have mechanically compressed thousands of lymphangions, cycled the skeletal muscle pump across most of your torso and shoulders, and driven the thoracic duct through dozens of pressure cycles. That is the mechanism. It is not esoteric. Now, I want to address something directly, because if I do not, I am leaving you with an incomplete picture. The wellness space has made very large claims about manual lymphatic drainage, about rebounding, about vibration plates, about compression garments, about dry brushing, and about the viral idea that specific stretches can drain the lymphatic system overnight. Some of these have a basis in the physiology I just described. Many do not. A 2009 systematic review by Viro and colleagues in the Journal of Manual and Manipulative Therapy found that manual lymphatic drainage showed statistically significant decreases in pain and clinically significant reductions in edema in some populations, which is genuine evidence. But Cleveland Clinic notes that for general healthy people without a diagnosed lymphatic condition, the cosmetic and detoxifying claims around lymphatic massage are not well supported. Whole body vibration has been studied for other outcomes, including balance, muscle strength, and bone density, as cataloged by Simon and colleagues in 2024. But the evidence for vibration as a lymphatic intervention in healthy adults is preliminary at best. Rebounding has its advocates and some plausible mechanism through the calf muscle pump, but rigorous randomized trials in healthy populations are sparse. I am not here to tell you those things do not work. I am here to tell you the evidence is uneven. The marketing is often ahead of the science, and the safest claim you can anchor yourself on is the one supported by the physiology. Movement of skeletal muscle, intrinsic lymphatic contractions, and deep diaphragmatic pressure changes on the thoracic duct are the three mechanisms. Any movement, including the reach and breathe I just described, that engages all three, is going to engage more of your lymphatic network than one that does not. That is the entire claim. A note on what is not appropriate for this video. I am not a doctor. I am not a lymphedema therapist. The information here is general educational content about the anatomy and physiology of how the lymphatic system functions in healthy adults. If you have a diagnosed lymphatic condition, including primary or secondary lymphedema, lipedema, post-mastectomy lymphedema, post-cancer treatment lymphatic compromise, or any swelling that has not been medically evaluated, this information is not a substitute for the care of a qualified clinician. People with active cancer, those recovering from surgery involving lymphatic structures, those with thrombosis risks, those who are pregnant, and those with uncontrolled blood pressure should not adopt any new stretching protocol without first speaking to the appropriate healthcare provider. I want to say that clearly because the topic invites overreach, and I do not want to encourage it. Let me close by adding one more layer because it is genuinely interesting. There is another drainage system in your body that almost no one talks about, and it is a close cousin of the lymphatic system. It is called the glymphatic system, and it was characterized by the laboratory of Maiken Nedergaard at the University of Rochester. A 2015 review of the system was published by Jessen and colleagues and remains the most cited overview. What the glymphatic system does is clear metabolic waste out of your central nervous system through perivascular channels in the brain, and it does most of this work while you sleep. Slow, controlled breathing does not directly activate the glymphatic system. What does activate it is sleep itself, particularly deep non-REM sleep, because that is when the interstitial space of your brain expands by roughly 60%, allowing cerebrospinal fluid to flush through and clear the metabolic byproducts of the day's neural activity. The reason I am mentioning it here is that the lymphatic system and the glymphatic system are linked. The waste cleared from the brain ultimately drains along the same cranial nerve sheaths and dural lymphatic vessels that connect to your cervical lymph nodes. So, Whatever supports your broader lymphatic flow, including full-body deep breathing, supports drainage pathways connected to your brain's nightly cleanup. It is one system, viewed at different scales. Here's what I want you to walk away with. Your lymphatic system has no central pump. It moves because of three named mechanisms: the intrinsic contractions of lymphangions, the extrinsic compression of skeletal muscle, and the pressure changes created by your diaphragm on the thoracic duct. A single movement that lengthens your torso from hip to fingertips while you breathe deeply into your belly engages all three of those mechanisms at once. It takes 10 minutes a day. It costs nothing. The mechanistic case for it is built on published research, not on wellness mythology, and the system it supports runs parallel to your circulatory system, serves your immune function, clears metabolic waste, and connects, through your cervical lymphatics, to the deep cleanup that happens every single night inside your brain. If this video helped you understand how your body actually moves its own fluid, make sure to subscribe to the channel. And if you try the stretch, leave a comment telling me what you felt in the stretch and what changed after 2 weeks of doing it daily. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.